The most dangerous moments in life don't feel dangerous at all. They feel warm, comfortable, familiar. A voice softens, a hand reaches out, a smile lingers just long enough to disarm you, and you fall into it without noticing. Because when kindness wears a mask, it isn't gentle. It's a test, a trap, a mirror reflecting every weakness you've tried to hide. You reveal more than you intended. You bend more than you realized. And in that silence that feels like safety, you are already being measured. By the time the truth comes for you, the access has already been granted. We grew up with stories about kindness, stories that tell us kindness is virtue, warmth is safety, softness equals good intentions. And on the surface, this makes sense. But human psychology doesn't operate on slogans. It operates on impulses, patterns, nervous states, and conditioned responses. And kindness, whether real or performed, has a unique ability to push people into a psychological posture that simply doesn't happen with other social signals. Why? Because kindness doesn't confront your defenses, it dissolves them. Your conscious mind thinks it's in charge of trust, but it isn't. Before you consciously evaluate someone's intentions, your nervous system runs a fast, automatic assessment. Threat? No threat? Possible safety? Aggression is easy to classify. Dominance is easy to classify. Unpredictability is easy to classify. Those trigger survival responses. But calm attention, soft voice, presence without pressure, that doesn't trigger defense. It triggers something deeper. Connection mode. In connection mode, breathing slows, shoulders relax, vigilance drops. Cognitive filters loosen buyer. This is not choice, it's reflex. Your body assumes no threat, no need to stay guarded. And the moment you drop guard psychologically, you become easier to read than you think. Connection mode is honest, not wise. There's a difference between honest and strategic. Connection mode doesn't make you smart. It makes you transparent. Under pressure, people perform. Under comfort, people default. Default behavior reveals how fast you trust a view, how deeply you attach one, how uncomfortable you are with imbalance, how much you feel responsible for others' emotional states. These are patterns, and patterns are data. Kindness doesn't extract explicit information. It elicits behavioral truth, and that truth is far more valuable to someone who's watching than any direct answer you could give. A probe doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be quiet and unnoticeable. That's where warmth becomes an effective tool. It doesn't ask questions. It observes responses. It doesn't pressure. It watches how you handle comfort, how you handle attention without defense, how your automatic responses reflect your internal wiring. Kindness doesn't create barriers to test you. It removes them. And the first person who notices the leakage is the one with the advantage. There is a mechanism built into human social cognition called reciprocity pressure. It exists because early human societies needed balance to survive. If I give you shelter, you give me help. If you give me food, I give you protection. This keeps us cooperative. But that ancient system isn't calibrated for modern complexity. So when someone gives you emotional generosity, time, attention, patience, your brain feels imbalance, even when nothing was asked of you. And that imbalance creates what we call psychological debt. Psychological debt shows up as guilt, obligation, the urge to repay, discomfort receiving without reciprocating. You may not be able to articulate it. You may not even notice it consciously, but your body feels it, and that affects your behavior. People don't respond to kindness. They respond to the pressures it creates. Most people assume that if someone is nice, there's no agenda. But kindness doesn't have to carry an agenda to influence outcomes. It only needs to create a psychological tension, and tension doesn't need to be loud to be effective. It can be soft, warm, and reassuring, till you find yourself agreeing faster than you meant to cruise, sharing more than you planned, softening boundaries you usually hold, feeling uncomfortable saying no. You don't think, I'm being influenced. You think, I owe them something. That thought, I owe something, is precisely the outcome the probe is designed to elicit. Why this works especially well on good people. This mechanism doesn't work equally on everyone. It works best on people who want to be decent braid, don't want to hurt others, overthink politeness, internalize responsibility for others' emotions, avoid conflict even when uncomfortable. These individuals don't resist warmth. They welcome it. And because they welcome it, their nervous system relaxes even faster, which means they trust faster. They feel indebted sooner. They soften boundaries earlier. And that makes them easier to influence, not because they're weak, but because their social calibration prioritizes harmony over self-preservation. How warmth becomes leverage. Most people imagine influence happening like this: pressure, resistance, force. But real leverage, the kind that shifts behavior without overt conflict, happens happens like this. Comfort, transparency adjustment. When your psychological comfort increases, your defenses decrease. When your defenses decrease, your internal thresholds shift. And when internal thresholds shift without your awareness, your behavior changes without your permission. That's leverage, not through force, but through withdrawal, because humans are more sensitive to loss than gain. Withdrawal is the invisible control. Once someone has watched how you behave in comfort, they don't need to pressure you. They use absence. They dial back warmth just enough for you to notice. A pause where there used to be reassurance. A slight change in tone when you disagree. Less attention than before. Nothing explicit is said, yet suddenly, you monitor your language. You choose your tone. You try to restore the emotional ease that once existed. You regulate yourself so they don't have to. This is how influence becomes internalization. You become the manager of your own compliance. This happens without malice, often without awareness. Here's what most people refuse to acknowledge. Not all influence is intentional. Not all probes are designed consciously. Not all manipulators sit with a checklist. Most people who use warmth this way aren't plotting. They're responding to reinforcement. They learn consciously or unconsciously that softness creates access. Listening creates loyalty. Patience builds influence. And because the outcome feels positive at first, they keep doing it until one person feels indebted and the other feels entitled. That's how a seemingly innocuous dynamic becomes asymmetrical. Skill without cruelty looks like empathy, and that's precisely why it is so effective. This is the difference most people never learn. Real care does not depend on your response. Real care does not escalate urgency. Real care does not withdraw when expectations aren't met. Real care feels steady, predictable, unconditional, unpressured. A probe, however, feels good at first, until you realize you're the one adapting. You're the one changing. You're the one monitoring your reactions. And the minute care becomes contingent, it wasn't care. It was influence. Kindness without collapse. The goal isn't to resist comfort. Comfort is not the enemy. But collapsing your boundaries in response to comfort, that is, to accept kindness with integrity, is to be vulnerable without being penetrable. That's the difference between softness and susceptibility.